My name is Blake Cohn. I am the Executive Director of the National Network of Schools in Partnership. And this is our third year of conducting these online workshops. I've sort of shifted away from the words webinar because we really want to have the notion that it's a conversation amongst people across the country who are working on the same ideas and sharing thoughts and initiatives and inspiration for how we can all make our work a little stronger. And it seemed like the perfect way to start this year by examining just the notion of what does community engagement look like at your school. Specifically, how is it structured in your school? Who's involved? And how does your role support what you're doing at your school? So why don't we start by just introducing ourselves? I will sort of suggest who introduces themselves at which time, and tell us where you're from, what your role is at your school, and then just give us a brief synopsis of sort of how you think community engagement plays at your school. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Blake.
How are you? Everybody,
Good, how are you?
College with Beth. I haven't seen her in forever, so.
I know, I was hoping we could hear a few stories.
Yeah, I was like, I got people with me, Blake. No stories.
Oh, hi, Hannah. Oh, good. Everybody's here. Okay, so we were starting with, we were just going to do introductions. Introductions of your name, your school, and what your role is, and sort of how your school envisions community engagement. Does that mean include notions of service learning, service, parent relations? Sometimes community engagement includes corporations and sponsorships. Just to give an idea of how diverse this definition of a role of community engagement is in your school. And since, Hannah, I'm looking right at you, you don't know that, but I'm going to ask that you go first.
Lovely. Okay. So, hi, everybody. My name is Hannah Roach. I'm the Service Learning Coordinator at the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools. Yeah, I mean, I think our definition of community engagement kind of continues to evolve. I focus a lot, as my title says, I focus a lot on service learning, so both academic, kind of course-based service learning, and then also service experiences for our students through advisory. And then I manage a year of service program where our sophomores commit to a year of service with one community partner agency over the course of the year. And so I think throughout all of it, we actually just hired somebody else now. I work in middle and high school, and my colleague is working nursery through middle school now. So that's exciting. We'll overlap in the middle school, but our program will kind of hopefully become more cohesive and an experience that we can have for students starting in nursery and graduating and knowing kind of what the touch points are throughout all the years. So yeah, I think for us, community engagement is about understanding the context of the community in which you'll be. So we talk a lot about intentionality and understanding kind of the historical significance of the place where you're going into, and then kind of questioning what your dispositions are as you enter community spaces. It's traditionally been really student-centered, so looking at what kind of experiences we can provide for students in partnership with organizations. And then I think we're kind of shifting or thinking through how do we create this experience that is not just for students, but really to create a culture we need to involve more stakeholders, so families and faculty and staff, and create, I guess, more of a culture of engagement without it just being focused on students. So that's kind of where we're at. We have a partnership that's been going on with under the University of Chicago. We have the laboratory schools, and then we also have 4 campuses that belong to a charter school. So we're trying to figure out what that partnership looks like and how we can bring our students together from different backgrounds to engage in community together. So there's kind of a lot. I'm sure that all of you will have.
I'm assuming
it's complicated.
It's going to be the theme, that it's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
Hannah touched on something that I forgot to add, is if when you're introducing yourself, if you'd add something that you're sort of thinking about or working on. And she mentioned that they're trying to create a culture with multiple stakeholders instead of just having it being 100% student oriented. That would be helpful as we shape this conversation. Okay, I'm going to give Lauren a second to welcome you. Hi, Lauren. And then Beth, you're next. You don't see it, but across my list is Beth. And if you guys would introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about St. Anne Belfield, it would be great.
Sure. So I'm Beth Miller. I'm the Associate Head of School for Academics, and I'm joined by...
I'm Warren Buford. I'm a Bowdoin College wannabe. Sorry, I couldn't make it in, but I'm the Associate Head of School for Advancement, which for us is External Affairs, includes everything.
Excellent.
Missions to develop.
Yeah, and I'd say our definition of community engagement is very much evolving. Community engagement is very important in our strategic plan last year. And so I think you're going to use the next 5 years to really come to a definition. But in terms of my world in the academic program, we are actively seeking partnerships similar to the ones that Hannah mentioned. We will be taking students up to Woods Hole to do scientific research for the first time this year as part of a redesign of our AP biology class. We've also recently really picked up the international travel. Our school historically was not very active in that regard. We've had exchange programs in Spain, France, and last year we had our first trip to China. And I think that was a particularly strong experience for community engagement because our population in the high school, we have 82 boarders. Many of them are from China, and so we took day students, non-Chinese day students over to China, and to have our Chinese students in their home country really serving as tour guides to our day school students, and then engaging current families and prospective families was just an awesome opportunity for us. And so we're hoping to grow that kind of community partnership.
The one thing I would add is that locally we think of community engagement as how are we providing, how are we a resource to our community? So we host a number of events in our auditorium, which has enabled us to build partnerships, and that has both a service component, meaning how are we serving the community. It also has a brand awareness and marketing component, and that's something that has been deliberate for us. Rather than advertising, we're doing more community partnerships and sponsorships and community engagement. The one area that I think we think a lot about is two things. One is how to engage alumni locally to do more in the classroom, to be future parents, so we think about alumni engagement. And the second is because the University of Virginia is very close to our campus and kind of we're in the shadow of the university, how to engage with the university a lot more deliberately. And so those would be two areas that I would say are initiatives moving forward.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Anita, do you want to go?
Sure. My name's Anita. I'm at the Evergreen School. I'm the Director of Diversity here. And I would say, we don't have a definition that we use across the school. We're at the place where, we have a lot of moving pieces. We have some programming that's been long-term community partners that specific classes will engage with year on year. And then we have a number of one-offs that we do depending on the year. We have primarily it's class specific. We're preschool through 8th grade. And so primarily it's different grade levels working together with a local organization for primarily the service, I would say. And we also have a parent piece where there's a parent committee that decides on a service organization. And there's like a one day where families come together and do some work. my interest is we have a strong focus on global citizenship. Our 8th graders spend a month abroad in an international country. This year it'll be Peru. And so what I'm interested in is how to make connections between the local and the global, how to have students really think about that, think about how those dynamics intersect to really support our mission.
Excellent. Not to shameless plug, but we do have another one of these online workshops that are about how to make your travel programs meaningful and sustainable partnerships. So, when you want to circle back around, we'll talk more about that there. But I think those are excellent questions that I'm sure many of us are talking about. Jen.
Hi.
Hi.
So my name is Jen Conti. I'm the Director of Internships at Columbus Academy in Columbus, Ohio. And this is my first year in this position. I had been the Alumni Director, and this is the second year of this position itself. So it's a new role. When I came into it, I found the director before me attached the community engagement piece to it to help frame the work. But as I got into it, I found that was confusing to other people. And they interpreted it as more service, which we have a very robust service program already. So even the service people looked at the job description and thought, how is this different from what we're doing? So, in the thinking of it was that as I'm going out and developing this internship program and trying to find organization partners, that's a lot of outreach, a lot of community outreach. How can we use our existing connections in that way? Our parents, alumni, community partners, that sort of thing. But when other people looked at it and met some people who were in more of a service nonprofit organization, I think they really latched on that community engagement piece, when the focus at this point really is the internships and not service sort of thing. And then additionally, how does my role help and impact and relate to our already robust service department? You find our students are going out on service, and is what they're doing a service hour, or is that more of an internship with a nonprofit? That sort of thing. And so trying to get involved with our service program and seeing what they're doing and how we can help each other. So it's all very new and young, and we're shaping it and trying to shape it how it looks to other people too. So I'm just trying to kind of gather information and see all the different ways that everybody's doing things, and so that I can kind of learn and steal from you.
It's not stealing. It's honoring other people's work. Donnie.
Hi, I'm Donnie Bain. I'm at Heathwood Hall Episcopal School in Columbia, South Carolina. And yes, it's beautiful behind us right now. We're hoping that it will stay that way a little longer, but apparently we're now in the direct line of this thing at some point. We're in our third year of a program that we started called Columbia Connections. And I've been the director of Columbia Connections all 3 years. Basically, we're creating partnerships, internships, experiential learning, volunteering, service, and so on across our entire school, kindergarten all the way up through our seniors. And we want to utilize all the different organizations, museums, universities, neighborhoods, and so on to help create realistic and challenging learning experiences for our students, taking advantage of the local experts who can share their knowledge and insight with students. We want to provide ways for the school and community to develop stronger relationships and establish the purposeful connections between what's being taught in the classroom and the surrounding community, local issues, the contexts and concepts, and so on. And then create opportunities for our students to engage directly with these experts and these organizations, and possibly finding solutions to some of these problems or some of the innovative thinking that goes with it. We've had for many, many years a Winterim program, which is a week-long program in March, where we do a lot of travel, we do a lot of different activities, classes, and so on for our entire upper school. I'm adding several of those programs this year. one dealing with archaeology locally and one dealing with doing some trail work on the Palmetto Trail, which after this week is probably going to need a lot of help down on the coast once this thing comes through. Someone mentioned about connecting with alumni. That's funny. That's one of the things I'm definitely in right now. I'm getting ready to do about an 800-piece mailing to alumni of our brochure and a cover letter, hopefully bringing in more of our alumni that live in the immediate Columbia Midlands area. We certainly want to be a resource to the community. I like that idea a lot of being able to give back to the community, whether it be hosting local chess tournaments and visiting authors to outside speakers and so on. My role pretty much, I think, can be defined as a dot connector. You know, I take what I know about the community, take what I know about the school, and try to connect programs and activities, and whether it be something as simple as a speaker coming in or a field trip, or maybe it's picking up and doing some projects and so on with the community in the city.
Excellent. I think there's a lot of overlap. It also sounds like you're doing a lot, Donnie. It sounds like there's a lot going on. Dory, how are you? Oh, you're on mute.
I am well. So to give a little bit of the OES story, I work at Oregon Episcopal School here in Portland, Oregon, and we are a pre-K through 12 school. There's been a lot of work over the last 7 years around service learning, and my job is inclusion and community engagement, but we have a service learning person in each division, both lower school and middle school. I'm sorry, I should say all divisions, lower school, middle school, and upper school. This year in upper school, they're actually splitting the position between two folks. One happens to be the dean for 9th graders. So the program is being developed into a 9th, 10th grade strand, which will be more focused on singular projects and community building amongst the kids. And then we're looking to grow that 11th, 12th grade strand to be based more in internships. So the other element that we have that's unique and I think a little bit different, we've had a 20-year relationship with the local public school district. And at this point, we're in a phase of renewal with that particular relationship. It's involved running a tutoring program for local middle school with our high school students and local high school students from the public school getting together and tutoring and mentoring middle schoolers, as well as a summer program that has been transformed into a social innovation program. So it uses design thinking with students who are multilingual or from the public school district, and we have them look for and try to solve or provide solutions for problems that they're seeing in their community. So I think that that program has informed a lot of what I'm thinking around community engagement as we look at this relationship with the local school district, because I think there's larger possibilities than necessarily the summer day camp and the tutoring program. I think there are some great opportunities for getting educators together to share about their practice.
Excellent. Thank you. Who am I missing? Lauren, I'm missing you.
Hi, I'm Lauren Brownlee. I'm Director of Social Action at Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of DC. And we have a social action program where 12 Wednesdays out of the year, the whole upper school goes out and works with partner organizations. And we have an assembly at the beginning of the day that has some theme of social justice, and we have reflection at the end of the day. And it's really at the heart of our upper school program. And I manage that program, so I'm just interested in seeing what else people are doing, what else we can incorporate into our program.
Excellent. VG, is that how do I say it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Fine. Well, I don't want to be fine. I would like to be correct.
It's actually Vigi.
Vigi. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If you'd introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I am the Director of Initiatives for Diversity and Inclusion at Trinity Episcopal School in Austin, Texas. We are a K-8 school. This community engagement is, I would say there are a lot of elements that everyone has talked about that we are also looking at. But I guess the way we're looking at it first and foremost is building relationships and partnerships and trust within our community. And incorporating with that is service learning and developing our service learning program. Right now, it's, I think we need to really investigate how we're doing true service learning as opposed to community service and how much deeper we can get. So that's one element. The other element is, there's so many different groups doing things on our campus, and what's the right hand doing and what's the left hand doing, and really building true meaningful relationships with, maybe it's not as many organizations right off the bat, but really, just digging in and building deeper relationships. And then also providing resources to our community. I mean, we have a beautiful campus, and just letting more people use that. So I think there's marketing, there's being a resource for the community, there's a lot of different pieces of this. But I think at the end of the day, it's building relationships and trust within our community. We are in Westlake, which is a predominantly wealthy white neighborhood, and we don't want to be that uppity school. So really we're a private school with a public purpose, I guess. And we a few years ago we started the Horizons program in Austin, and this is predominantly a program that started in the Northeast. So we're one of the few schools in the South, Southwest. New Mexico is the other state, but that we've started this program, and that's been huge. That has not only outreach within our community, but also a lot of our students volunteer with that program. But there's a lot more that we can do, and we're just trying to find ideas and really kind of streamline the process a little bit. If coordinate, I think it was Donnie who said it was a dot connector. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good description, Donnie.
That's perfect. Thank you. And I'll introduce you to somebody who works at the furthest west Horizons program, which would be Guyby. Am I right? You have to be the furthest west, right?
Yes, that's right. Nothing in Hawaii yet, but maybe someday. Yeah.
Welcome. I didn't get a chance to say hi.
Hello.
For being here. And would you give yourself a brief introduction?
Sure. Apologies for coming late. My name is Guyby Slangen, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at the San Francisco Friends School. We are a Quaker K-8 school here in the Mission District of San Francisco. And the reason I was late was because we have Wednesday morning meeting for worship. So our whole school community kind of pauses for the first 30 minutes of the day, and it's a good way to start the day. So that's one of our pillar practices here, as is the case with all Quaker schools. So my role as Director of Community Engagement, very similar to the folks who have come before me, where I am focused a lot on relationships and community building. And that community is used broadly, internal community here within our school, and then external community as well, with our surrounding neighborhood and neighbors and city. Everything from overseeing our carpool pickup and drop off and trying to appease our neighbors on either side of our school who are not always the happiest with us, to working with city officials on kind of larger efforts in the city, to supporting service learning partnerships and initiatives K-8. And as is Vigi, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We too are a Horizons program, as was mentioned, and that's a big effort, and working with our surrounding public schools to support summer learning loss, and looking to grow that network out here in the Bay Area as well. So I would say a lot of the similar opportunities, but as well as challenges as have been articulated previously. So
thanks, Guyby.
Thanks for bringing us together.
Sure. Steve, welcome. If you would be
Sure. Hi there.
to introduce yourself.
You bet. So I'm Steve Beleka. I am the Assistant Head of School for Academic Affairs at Hackley School, which is a K-12 in Tarrytown, New York, about 20 miles north of New York City. So similar to what I think a lot of the colleagues on the line have said, we have a number of areas in which community engagement is really at a high priority and functions pretty well. It's all developed, like in so many independent schools, organically. And we're looking forward to, with the launch of our new strategic plan, putting a different kind of intention behind this particular aspect of school life and student experience to tie together some of the things we do. A lot of what we've already heard, we send about 80 or 90 kids abroad each year on various global trips, all of which actually have some kind of truth service learning component. We're in the midst of a transition between community service model towards service learning. We have a team of teachers that are very adept at that, working on it. We have a very well developed, and it may be one of our best areas in this, a very well developed alumni outreach, so that our senior internships or externships, as so many schools have as a capstone for the 12th grade, about 80% of them take place with or through alumni connections. And we do a number of other things. I oversee our relations with neighbors and the neighborhood and town. And our strategic plan is built on a portrait of a graduate, which we spent last year developing together. And a large focus of that portrait of a graduate is helping students find their own accomplishment and success, not as personal and individual success, but as that which transcends individual ability and individual endeavor to include others. So.
And Steve, I happened to be on your website this morning, and your mission is, can you remind me? It was so perfectly aligned with this work. Am I right?
It is. Yes. Hackley challenges students to grow in character, accomplishment, scholarship, and then a phrase that is very iconic to Hackley, show unreserved effort, and to learn from the varying perspectives in our community and the world.
Yeah, it popped up like right on the side. I can't remember where I saw it. It was awesome. So I know that everybody has their.
Some of the work I do, so I'm glad.
I put you on the spot. Come on, know your mission.
Yeah. I hope I passed.
Of course. Okay. Thank you guys all so much for sharing briefly what you do. First off, I'd like to open anybody who has a question about what they heard from anybody else. Feel free to speak up. If we have trouble interrupting with one another, there is a way to raise your hand in this, but let's just try it without doing that. I find that super confusing to raise your hand in these Zoom meetings. So does anybody have any questions? Guy B, oh, you're gonna really raise your hand.
I'm old school here. So I guess I'm curious about what it looks like at everyone's schools in terms of service learning that is integrated within curricula as opposed to separate from. And it might be still service learning. Like for some schools, it might be, okay, we're going to do this service learning class and you're going to learn about this issue. Or it might be more in the realm of community service. But I'm kind of trying to understand what it looks like, particularly K-8 schools, of kind of integration woven into the curriculum or cross-curricular as well, versus the there's some teachers who are like, why don't we just have the service learning class and kind of just have, this person kind of do that and I do my history class, So I'm just wondering kind of what that looks like across schools and how effective it is, or any guidance there.
Well, we are Trinity is a K-8 school, and I have to say, I actually have seen some of the, I think in diversity listservs, you've responded about service learning, and you have an amazing program. I have saved what you all are doing.
Thank you.
A little bit of everything, and it's. I mean, I think this is an area where we definitely. I would like to follow the model that you all are doing, because I feel like you're integrating into every single class. We have done pockets of things, like sometimes, like the 5th grade, they've always done a malaria project, but it's like a month, and it's integrated into those subjects. We also do, we have a service learning elective for kids who want to do that. And so, and then our chapel, we have chapel every single day. So definitely there's a lot of, teaching and learning there, but I want to see it more integrated into all subjects. I think that's where true service learning happens. And you're the model.
Thank you. That's very kind. That's very kind. Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of some of the work that we've done, and certainly not satisfied. I feel like there's always more that we can do. So I'm always open to exploring and deepening and furthering what we're doing here. So, but
I might want to have a conversation with you late, like off at a different time, and then maybe just get your ideas on
happy to help.
Started, because I think that that's pretty. It's a little bit scary to get started in the right way.
I agree.
Everybody on board, and everybody on board. So.
So one of the questions that we could pose based on what Gabi was talking about is what are some strategies that you all use to engage your own community, and also your community, the internal community, your parents, your board, your teachers, your alums, along with your external community, which I would see as your neighbors and the community organizations that you work with and the schools in your area, et cetera. How do you strategically go about interacting and establishing relationships that would create sustainable programs for your school?
I'll answer that, and just to say, sorry.
No, go ahead, Beth, and then Dory.
So, I mean, I think that just making that leap, whether it's from your strategic plan or just a commitment on the part of the school to build those relationships. For us, it was looking at work that we already did and then trying to look at it through the lens of community engagement. And so, for instance, our computer science program, K through 12, is all about integration into the existing curriculum rather than a separate class. And it just so happens that the teachers in that department, it's just a department of 2, really said, how can we build community relationships through this program? And so I think I heard it mentioned by one of the other participants that, building PD opportunities for teachers on our campus is something that they're deeply committed to. Also using some of our existing community partners to support summer programming for both public and independent school students. It's grown tremendously, that public-private bridge through, computer science, which doesn't necessarily say community engagement, but I think because it's a new program, they just said this is of value to us to build partnerships. And so it was a great starting point. And then now it's almost a model for any future programming we'll do.
I think it's always important to find a strength or an interest, and then and build off of that. I'm sorry. Can you guys hear that? I apologize. But anyway, Dory, you were going to say something. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Muting. Sorry. Slow to unmute. I think one piece that's come up for me, a big space of learning, has been around deepening those relationships with outside entities. And I think that one piece for me that's really huge is focus. Rather than trying to build 16 different relationships, by narrowing that focus, perhaps on 1 or 2 really strong relationships, it builds more depth and more knowledge of each other. So I think that's really why we have evolved this real focus on the relationship with the school district. And out of that, some other pieces have come. So one piece that's come up with the school district that our local school district, OES, and some of the other schools in the area is retaining and recruiting teachers of color. And out of the conversations had around that, a group has been created called Focus. And at this point, it's not a nonprofit, but will eventually probably be. It's folks of color in schools, independent and private schools. And it is really focused on building affinity and allyship to retain educators of color in the local school district, the independent schools, and the private schools as well.
Steve.
Yeah, we have two strategies that just recently have borne some really wonderful fruit. One is about 4 or 5 years ago, we were looking into a summer bridge or Horizons style summer academy for students to have our teachers and some of our upper school students serving in that capacity. And we decided, rather than attaching on to some of the wonderful existing programs that are out there, we wanted to home grow our own model. And so it's now in its 4th year. It's called Hudson Scholars. And we sent the teacher who's really most passionately engaged in this, together with a group of students, to our local middle school. I helped to open some doors through the superintendent, and it was really getting students in front of students, that is upper school students in front of some teachers and some middle school students, that created the spark that has led to what's so far been a really successful model. After our 3rd summer, we've been serving about 48 or 50 kids that live less than 2 miles away, that are of need and promising students. It is not at all a pipeline into admissions. It is truly and purely a relationship building between our school and our kids and teachers and our local community. And it's extended after its 2nd year into year-round service, so our kids tutor or simply meet in a supervised capacity students from the local middle school in town or on our campus or on their campus for various things. It's been really powerful. And the second is I oversee our professional development, and created a couple years ago an I grant, an innovation grant, which I set aside for up to 3 projects or 3 teachers, could be teams of teachers per year, with the hope that at least a few who I knew were very interested in service learning might take the opportunity. It provides a sizable chunk of money for summer work extended into the year to develop an idea. So we've had folks do gaming, we've had folks do gender work, and just recently the 3 or 4 teachers who are most vividly enacting service learning spent the better chunk of a summer interviewing the majority, I would say, of our teachers to find touch points in the curriculum that pre-exist. And then they spent their summer, funded by the school, looking for those community moments where it would make sense to do a service learning insertion point. So both of those strategies have so far been pretty helpful.
That's fantastic. I love that idea. There's a school in Newport Beach, California, where they have a similar grant, but their grant requires that you bring your partner, your community partner, to the summer study, and then they do a design thinking challenge or week, where these pods of people across Sage Hill's campus are all working on service learning, but they've brought their partners in to work with them as well. And the school actually gives a stipend to the public and charter school teachers as well. So just it's a great way. I love that your teachers took on sort of finding inspiration for other teachers in their touch points to encourage them. I think there's no 2 greater supporters or encouragers of this work than what you said. Students, we all know students are way more engaging than we are when we're talking about this work. If they're into it, then we'll all want to do it with them. And then also really putting on a pedestal the teachers that are doing this well and sharing their stories so that other teachers understand the depth of learning that kids are getting out of this work, and that it's not just extra work for you, that there really is a significant benefit to have kids who are engaged in their learning and find purpose in what they're doing outside of school. Hannah.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things too that I'm thinking about how I personally have started to kind of rethink what our partnerships look like with organizations is to not necessarily always default to what can we do for service with you, but how can you teach our students the important work that you're doing in our community. So a lot of what our partnerships have been, even through like course-based kind of, I guess what would maybe be considered service learning, is taking our students during their course time to a community space and learning from people who are on the ground doing work. So for example, in African American history class, we are located on the south side of Chicago, and crossing kind of boundaries into neighborhoods that are turn into neighborhoods that look very different from Hyde Park, which is where our school is located. So we went to a bordering community called Woodlawn to hear from a community agency that was able to give us a whole history on segregation in Chicago. And students didn't do anything. They just sat and listened and learned from somebody that has been embedded in the community for 20 plus years. And then first a science class we did, they learned about students did took soil samples to learn, and saw at Northwestern they were taking samples of soil to see what toxins were in areas, especially where in predominantly minority or underrepresented groups in the city of Chicago were being disproportionately affected. And so I think going to the lab and just seeing what work is done, and students did like a little bit of collecting things before, but just starting to rethink like that the action piece doesn't have to be the initial thing or the initial interaction with an organization, that they can really just go listen first and learn from people that are doing the work.
It's great exposure. Anybody else? So the question that seems to be coming up is, how do you focus what you are doing to have it not be 5,000 different smaller components at your school? It seems that some schools have really had the advantage to start from scratch, but many of us are starting with lots of great programs that are happening that sort of fit under the umbrella of this work, but may not. So how do you define what fits under your umbrella and what doesn't? And how do you cull some things that, while good, might not be worth sustaining over the years?
I would just chime in by saying, for me, I found the most effective, quote unquote, buy-in is to work directly with teachers and starting from their curriculum and looking at ways in which it can be enhanced, deepened, enriched by taking it outside of the traditional classroom and into the community. And so that is, definitely, it creates that buy-in, I think, from the teaching team, because they're invested in it. They want to deepen their curriculum. They want to further it. And that kind of checks that box there already. And the key is, though, finding a community partner where there is a sense of authenticity and reciprocity that is there. And it's just, it's not busy work for the sake of just kind of doing it. But there is actual meaning and there's depth in the service piece to it as well. So, we've been fortunate to find some good partners here in our community, but, curriculum shifts, curriculum changes as well. So that requires some management and navigation and conversation. But I think starting with the teachers themselves and what they're doing in the classrooms and how you might be able to deepen and enhance teaching and learning by way of this work, I found that to be most effective, I'd say.
Gabby, if you don't mind me asking, if you're working with a teacher, how does, well, two questions. Do the teachers approach you? Do you sort of go out? Do you meet with all the teachers throughout the year? How does that work? I mean, not every school is as lucky as San Francisco Friends to have a person dedicated to this work 100%. So how is it shaped at your school? How do you support these teachers?
Yeah, so I do meet with teachers and attend team meetings, and I'm in pretty regular communication. Now it's K-8, so there's 9 grades that I'm kind of overseeing. And on any given year, though, there are certainly some projects that are kind of focusing more of my time and energy. Maybe it's a revamp of a certain aspect of the curriculum. First grade this year, for instance, is wanting to kind of deepen their gardening curriculum, and we're working with a neighborhood restaurant here that's going to host a kind of farmers market feast of the first graders. That's a new project, so that's taking up a little bit more of my bandwidth. But the others are more just kind of maintenance and kind of regular ongoing support, and how I might be able to deepen and continue those things. So yeah, it does take up time, and it does kind of require me to kind of be in a lot of places, and I'm fortunate that I have that opportunity to do that. But also in your question, I'm hearing like, are teachers coming to me? And I would say, yeah, there's definitely that energy here and that understanding and that expectation that this is definitely part of who we are and what we do. We're compelled by our mission, our Quaker values, like, in the hiring process, and it's just kind of in the air, so to speak, so I'm immensely grateful that it's, I don't have to do a lot of the convincing of like the why this is important. There's already that kind of fundamental understanding of why we do this work. It's more now focused on the what does that look like? And what can I do to help? What can we do to deepen and strengthen this aspect of your curriculum? And again, that looks very different at different ages and stages and grade levels. But I'm really grateful that the fundamental why, the purpose part of this, of why we do this work is definitely ingrained and embedded here already. So I know that's not the case everywhere, but yeah.
You're a model, though. I always talk about how you're on every admissions tour.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a really good example. I mean, I do all the admissions and all the open houses, and I'm meeting with folks, and just everything speaks is it's a term that we use here. So when we are quote unquote marketing ourselves, like this is a part of who we are, and we're kind of out there. And if you're a parent who doesn't want your 5-year-old to go to a homeless shelter, then, maybe this isn't the place for you, but it's kind of this unabashed out there, this is who we are and what we do. So it feels good to be in that space.
So also, and anybody can answer this question, how much time do you spend sort of off campus developing these relationships? Like, how do you find a restaurant that's willing to help? What, 3rd graders? What grade are they in?
That was first grade. Yeah.
So, I mean, how are you developing those relationships? Is that just organic for you from being here for a while?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in that case in particular, it was really interesting because I'm starting my 10th year here at the school. So more and more, it's really interesting just by the way I've been able to kind of establish the school and our program around kind of who we are and what we do. There's been a couple of organizations over the last couple of years that have actually come to our school to kind of learn more. And the mission is kind of ground zero for the whole gentrification debate, and people kind of want to be doing it well, and they want to focus on relationships. So again, we've had the good fortune of being able to establish some really strong relationships over the years. So with that restaurant, for instance, I was introduced to them by somebody else who said, hey, if you're a new restaurant, if you want to kind of understand the landscape of the mission in the neighborhood, you should connect with Guyby and kind of spend some time and learn what they've been able to do. So from there, it kind of just grew, and we had some brainstorming, and it's been great. That's one example.
Steve, you had something to say. I saw your hand.
Sure. So in a very different environment, so we have a much different kind of a structure. We have a distributed structure. So we have coordinators in each of our 3 divisions for service, for example, or for sustainability. And the Hudson Scholars Summer Program, as I mentioned, lives elsewhere. So we don't have any one person who oversees all of those, except for, frankly, me, assistant head of school. I don't have enough time to do all of it because I have many, many other responsibilities. But what seems to be working is setting up occasional structured meetings, actually not occasional, regular structured meetings with each of the in-school stakeholders and encouraging them to reach out amongst themselves. So we've had some wonderful homegrown initiatives between our sustainability and our service coordinators that might not have happened because everyone has very, very busy lives at our school as at everyone else's. But for the thread of a conversation that I remembered overhearing in a previous meeting with a group of coordinators that I would feed on to another one. It's a little catch as catch can, but I suppose it's better than nothing. And the seeds that get planted and then get sown and with fruit sort of reaped sometimes a year or 2 or 3 later can sometimes be really magnificent. We wind up having a lot of our teachers themselves out in the community, and they know to check back in once they've created a potential relationship so that we can vet it, but it's too much for any one individual to handle. So, distributing it in that way, while not ideal, it brings its own challenges, seems to be working in some respects.
Does anybody have any other thoughts? So as we're thinking about this, how do you create a common understanding of what community engagement means at your school? Where does that stem from? How do you create a culture where everybody has bought into this notion of community engagement?
I can go. I think for us, still very new to this landscape, but all our change in direction, our shift in direction is coming from our new head of school. So she's in her 4th or 5th year now, and she's really been the leader of our differences in what we're doing. She's been out in the community engaging with we're in a suburb of Columbus, so engaging with our little local mayor. We hosted the mayor's state of the town or whatever here in our new dining facilities. We just underwent campus construction in the past couple of years. And we also hosted the Taste of Gahanna, a community event. So Donnie and Beth, who your development director who was with you before, mentioned about being more out in the community and how can we help the community, and that seems to be a lot of what we're doing as well. But really it's coming from her, and I looked to her when there was confusion on what this role is, help set the stage a little bit. So ours is coming from the top down, and all the assistant directors and the school heads are on board, and it's infiltrating into the divisions and the classes from there.
Yeah, and I'll jump onto that and just say that I went to the GEBG conference for the first time last spring. And
what is that?
The Global Educator Benchmark Group. I highly recommend it. I mean, their focus is on global, but I found that there were a tremendous number of sessions that related closely to this conversation around service learning and community engagement, both at the local and the global level. And there was one really powerful session, and if I can look in my notes, I'll share the name of those presenters and their school, but they really focused on that notion of shifting the common language at our own schools from service as like, we have something to give you and you're on the receiving end, to community engagement. And it was there where this seed really was planted for me. And so when I came back to my school, I started using the language that I wanted our school to use at all levels. And I've just found that it's trickling out. And it started with a meeting with our communications director and just saying, hey, let's begin to shift and talk about partnerships and community engagement and not so much service. We invited an alum of the school who has expertise in this area from the University of Virginia to speak to alumni. And so for me, it's just been helpful to have this trickle out effect. And then every opportunity that I have working with teachers and administrators, I use that same language. So I've just found that organically it's starting to bubble up.
Isn't it amazing what language, like a shift in language does? I mean, really, it's just getting used to a couple new phrases. You're pretty much saying the same thing. You're just shifting it. There's a school in Manhattan, an all-girls school, who they basically they publish in their website language that they use for terms that they use. This is what you're trying to say, but this is how we say it. And it's just there for the parents and the faculty and the students to read and to just ingrain. I always say that schools that have younger students, like K-8, have an advantage because not only are their kids young, but their parents are young. And so you can really guide parents into the language that they use and what they value in an education, more so than you can once they get to 9th grade and they are bogged down with all of the things that are hurdling all those high schoolers when they're trying to prepare to go to college and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I would just chime in and say that I really appreciate the shift in language. I think language is definitely important to guide thinking and acting. And I would say, though, there's danger as well in just kind of stopping at the language, because ultimately it's about behavior and culture and values. I think we've all seen that shift in diversity, where it talks about from diversity to multiculturalism to equity and inclusion. And that's all good. Believe me, I get it. And I think that's important. However, if it's just the surface level and the culture is not changing, then you're actually kind of doing a disservice to the work, And I think that's the danger where a lot of schools, and what I've seen is, they'll have the director of diversity, they check that box and they'll be like, oh, that's so-and-so's issue. I teach my AP US history and chemistry, and that's it. So I think language is important. I think language can also be a little bit of a potential pitfall as well, if it doesn't go deep to culture and values and behavior. And that is more of the hard work. That's the kind of pervasive shift that has to happen. And that is, with hiring, with head searches, with recruitment and retention of families. Those are the kind of deeper, more challenging things. But I would say language is definitely a key element to making that change,
All right, I'm super aware of the time, but I'm also aware that we've barely even touched on this. It's almost 1 my time. And I would like, does anybody have any other questions? And then I'm gonna suggest we try to do this again to continue this conversation. I feel like there's a lot to be shared here. If anybody has any lingering questions or would like to connect with any of the people here, I'm just going to speak on your behalf. I'd be happy to share contact information for all of you so that you can connect. NNSP is nothing but if they're not a good network. And so I think one of the strengths of all of our programming is connecting people who are working on this, because you guys are everyone is working sort of by themselves or with just a small team at their schools, and it's helpful to know that there's a big team of us all over the country working on this work. So are there any last questions or comments? No?
I would just put a plug in for the NNSP annual conference. I'm speaking on Blake's behalf here, but if you haven't attended, or if you're not already aware of it, there's an annual conference in DC in January.
January 27th and 28th.
Yeah, so great opportunity to do a lot more of this work. Great speakers, great sessions, and we're also accepting proposals at this point as well. So if you're interested in presenting, would definitely encourage you as an opportunity to both share with and learn from others. It's really, I think, one of the premier conferences for this type of work.
Thanks, Skyby. And another plug is that more of these online workshops are coming up. There's one next week that is how to make the most of your summer programs. So those of you who are talking about Horizons and your own homegrown summer slide programs, talking really about how to make those authentic engagement programs with your own students and communities. Lots of them are great for students from outside of your school, but how do you really get your own community involved and have it worthwhile for everybody? So if you'd like to join that, you obviously all know how to sign up because you did so successfully for this one. And if there's anything else, you know where to find me. I would love to connect with all of you. Beth, we seriously have to catch up. Is there anything else? And if not, I'll let you all go back to your real jobs. I really appreciate you being here. We kicked this one off it was great, and I'm really excited for this school year. I hope you all are as well. Donnie, be safe.
We'll do our best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.